Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with host Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe and share so you never miss an episode. Search for us on your favorite podcast app, or you can find the podcast on jimmyhinton.org and findingahealingplace.com. Please rate our show, subscribe, and share so we can spread the word. If you would like to support us and get exclusive rewards, go to patreon.com/speakingout. Find a tier that best fits you and join as a patron of the podcast. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast with hosts Jimmy Hinton
and Jimmy's mom, Clara.
Thank you to our patrons who religiously support this podcast. And if you would like to join and become a patron of the podcast and get all kinds of rewards, of course, visit patreon.com/speakingout. I had to pause about that because some people just say slash, and I'm old school, so I'm used to saying backslash.
Well, it is a backslash, so
it is because there's a backslash and a forward slash.
Yeah, right. So.
Anyway, in this episode, we're going to talk about our blindness to looking at facts and accepting that somebody who we love and respect could be an abuser, and how we become really reactive and we get angry at the people who accuse, including the victims. And specifically, we're going to be talking about Ravi Zacharias, because that was an interesting one. Ravi Zacharias has had accusations for years. It was really infuriating for me to see the responses from people. I had put a couple posts up right about the time of his death because people were just drooling over him. And this deification of our heroes is really bizarre. I've never been into that. The whole celebrity crush thing and, fainting when a celebrity goes by, and even making people in Christendom celebrities. This whole idea of celebrity pastors is really bizarre, and it's just off-putting to me. And we really have a sick culture where we just love and adore people, and we pant over them. And it's really gross.
I'm going, I got caught up into one person.
Jimmy Swaggart, wasn't it?
It was.
I knew it. I knew it was Jimmy Swaggart back in the 80s.
Oh gosh. No, it was not in a religious realm, but Princess Di, I loved her. I don't know what it was about her, the way she spoke, the way she treated the downcast and whatnot. But when she died, that is the only time I really connected. I remember crying, and I'm thinking, whoa, I didn't know her. But in my mind, she was just that embodiment of beauty and kindness and all of that. And so I can see
how people get sucked into that.
I do. Yeah. And especially in the world of Christendom, because that, we need pure people. We need good people. We need kind people. We need to know that somebody out there is really living and walking the talk.
Yeah, I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between that and turning people into celebrities. And it's this whole notion of because they're a leader, they can do no wrong. And because I see them doing all these good works, that must mean they're a good person. And it's the unwillingness to look into the facts that really frustrates me more than anything. Because it's this instant, they put a wall up and say, how dare you put this information out there? And I was getting backlash. I had posted a couple things in support of Lorianne Thompson. And I said, it's really discouraging to victims of abusers whenever the abusers are being deified, whether it's upon their death or whatever. But, all the things that were being said about Ravi Zacharias was, he's such a great man. He's such a wonderful person. He had an untainted ministry. I saw tons of posts about
I
that.
actually printed off from the post there. It's like 22 pages of praise. Yeah, for him.
Yeah. So Julie Roy's had done a 3-part series.
Yeah, I read through that, and it's like,
and it was excellent.
Wow.
And the comments. We'll read some of those comments, but Ravi Zacharias, just as a little bit of a background, is one of the most dishonest people. He was really incredibly dishonest and defiantly dishonest. So he was caught over a period of years, giving false credentials. He referred to himself when he would write books. He was Dr. Ravi Zacharias. He never got his doctorate. He never got his PhD. He has absolutely no right putting the initials doctor in front of his name. The reason he did it is because he had received an honorary doctorate. And an honorary doctorate is not a degree. It's just an honor. You cannot ethically, you cannot put doctor in front of your name with an honorary doctorate.
Well, obviously he didn't care, and neither did his following.
But he was so defiant about it too. And when he was called out on it, his attorneys threatened to sue people and for defamation and all this stuff. So it's not like he removed it and was like, I can't get away with that. He was defiant about it, and he inflated all of his credentials, talking about teaching at Cambridge University, and that was found to be false. Or Oxford. I guess it was Oxford. He said, when I was, said it hundreds of times, when I was a professor at Oxford. He was not a professor at Oxford. Well, he's lying. I think is a little bit naive on the part of his followers, though, because they never wanted to look into these accusations.
No,
it's not like they thought he was a rebel and he was being dishonest and he was getting away with it. They believed that he was a professor at Oxford.
And the more adamant he became, probably the more they figured, back off, people, leave him alone. Yeah, he's a great guy. You're picking at him because you're jealous.
So, there's that. And then Julie Roy's, I think, did a really good job of laying out the evidence. And, she had spoken with Lori Ann and her husband, Brad. In this 3-part series, she talked about and even showed, some of the emails, like when Lori Ann said that she was going to talk to her husband, Ravi snapped back and he said, I swear if you do this, I will have no other option but to bid this world goodbye. He's threatening suicide.
I read that.
And putting that on her shoulders. And what he's saying is, if you do this, it's your fault that I'm dead.
Right.
And that's such a common tactic with abusers. He was never going to kill himself.
No.
He was never even thinking about it, but he was using that as leverage to try to silence her. So at the memorial service, when he died of cancer a few months ago. I want to play a couple clips. The first is from Vice President Mike Pence. And there's a couple sound bites that I'm going to play from this.
All like us had the privilege to know and cherish this good man, this godly man, this man for all seasons. On the death of Abner, King David said, "Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen in Israel this day?" Ravi Zacharias was such a man. Remarked, and I quote, "A great voice has been lost, but the message goes on." And those two things are just as true today. In the late Reverend Billy Graham, it's been observed that God gave us the greatest evangelist of the 20th century. In Ravi Zacharias, God gave us the greatest Christian apologist of this century.
So when Vice President Pence gave the speech, I lost count, but he used the word truth at least a dozen times that I heard, and I just kind of picked up on that. He kept going back to truth, and this man spoke in truth, and he pursued truth, truth over and over and over again. And I thought to myself, this man was a fraud. He lied about his degrees. He lied about his credentials and, places that he spoke, places that he was supposedly a professor, but he wasn't. It was recently uncovered that he owned 2 massage parlors, and now some of the employees are coming out saying that, he would come in and he was the biggest misogynist. He would mistreat the women and sexualize the women in this massage parlor. And, he was grabby and gropey and just gross. So, here's a man that was completely dishonest, but nobody wants to hear that. So
I was going to say, do you think Vice President Pence actually believed that this man was such a good, man?
yeah, I do. I don't think
I do too.
I don't think he ever bothered to take the
Right.
time to
That's what
see
I
if he had
think.
any scandals in his background.
Absolutely. That's what I think.
I think he just,
Mhm.
he was
Went
so
along with the
taken in
crowd.
by him
Yeah.
that he was just this incredible, great man who was well
Right.
revered by the whole world, that he never did a quick search to see if he even had a single
Mhm.
scandal in his background.
Right.
Okay, so here's Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany talking about her tribute to Ravi Zacharias. This is a CBN News interview.
Can I ask you a personal question about Ravi Zacharias passing away just in the last 24 hours or so? I know his teachings were so important to you, especially at Oxford. You've mentioned this. Can you tell me a little bit about what he meant to you personally and the loss for the Christian community?
Yeah, it's a huge loss. My dad said to me that Billy Graham was the great evangelist. And I think Ravi Zacharias is the great apologist.
Yeah. I know this is tough. I know. Yeah.
We don't have to cry because we're Christians, so we know it's about this.
Yeah, I mean, we're human the last time I checked. But the tears come from what? What was it that, because it feels like Oxford and your development of your faith.
Yeah, and Ravi's someone that I never met. I know his team, and I know some of those who are around him, but
Ravi was someone I never met.
Mm-hmm.
She's crying. She's sobbing over
Right.
his death.
Right.
He was such a great man. He was, the great Christian apologist. Here's Tim Tebow at the memorial service.
And kneeling by Ravi's bedside, holding his hand, he looked at me after he told me a couple of jokes like he always does. And he's holding my hand and he says, when I was watching you and I was watching you play your games, before I ever met you, I knew one day we were going to be brothers. And I said, yeah, Ravi, I knew we were going to be brothers because we were brothers in Christ, but I got to tell you, you are so much more than a brother to me. You have been a mentor, you have been a teacher, you have been a pastor, you have been a friend, but you have also been a hero. And I don't say that lightly. Besides talking about my dad, I don't know that I've really said that about anybody.
And on and on and on it goes. So, I had made a post, not as a smart aleck post or anything like that. It was just, it was a post like, maybe we need to step back and take a breath and remember that when we drool over these people, when we hold them to such a high level of reverence and talk about what great heroes they were, as if they never had any scandals in their background or anything like that, that's insulting and very damaging to their victims. And so, it wasn't anything personal about Ravi Zacharias. I didn't say anything demeaning to him. Certainly wasn't diminishing the fact that, he has a grieving family, nothing like that. And I'd put one of those posts up in a private group on Facebook, and holy cow, it didn't take long for the people to come back. Now's not the time.
The arrows were being shot.
This man was so pivotal in my faith, and they're the ones who personalized it and made it incredibly personal. They said things like, yeah, Jimmy, like you don't have any skeletons in your closet. And I'm like, I'm not talking about skeletons in a closet.
Yes.
Here's a man who abused so many people in so many different ways and was very defiant, but had a very good facade up. And I don't know how much of that was genuine and how much wasn't. I never knew the man, and I don't pretend like I did. But when we fail to acknowledge the damage that these people did, and all we have to say is, he was such a righteous person. He sought truth. He was the greatest Christian apologist of our time. When we say those things and we deify these people, it's insulting to truth, and it's insulting to their victims.
Well, we're making gods out of these people, and we're warned against that also. There's great harm in doing that. But it's, obviously when a man such as him is attractive, I'll say, charismatic. He has a great pull with millions of people, and truly he did. It's hard to break that spell.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. So,
it is. It's you can get sucked in so easily, but I think you're right, Jimmy. We're not taking into account the damage that it does to those who have been abused by such a person.
Well, and the damage to truth.
And the damage to truth.
And that's what's really frustrating. If, I'm going to look at some of these comments. This was Julia Roy's first part. So the Roy's Report, she did a 3-part series. It's called Betrayed Trust, Part 1. New testimony, emails, and other documents portray Ravi Zacharias as predator in sexting scandal. I'm not going to take the time to really unpack that. If you want to go read about it, I encourage you to do that. I think everybody should do that. But here's my point. The comments in this, there's 142 comments. And most of them are like this. Let's see. Not buying that story. No evidence. Even though embedded in this are letters from attorneys, emails, time-stamped, all that stuff. And she interviewed Lorianne and Brad. But no matter. Not buying it. No evidence. Here's another one. I also have bad feelings on this coming to light after Ravi has passed. Same way I had a problem with one of JFK's mistresses coming forward only a few years ago after nearly the entire family had passed. But I won't beat a dead horse, as others have indicated similar concern. Going on. Julie, this is so concerning, even heart-wrenching, if true. But one thing that's hard to understand is this statement from Lorianne's lawyer to Ravi before this all came out. In the alternative of protracted and public litigation, the couple will sign a release of you and your church and ministry in exchange for a certified check in the amount of $5 million, stated the letter from Bryant Law Firm. And then, of course, people speculated about that, and they're just after money, and they had planned and plotted, and she actually set Ravi up. That a lot of people are saying that. But I think Julie did a really good job of debunking all of those myths. Here's another comment. It takes two to tango. I love how every time a woman cheats on her spouse, she suddenly plays the victim and deflects all blame on her to her paramour. It's beyond ridiculous. Women want to be treated as equals until they make bad decisions, and then we're all supposed to believe their quote-unquote victimization as a truth statement. You want equal treatment, ladies? Then accept your fair share of blame. Here's another one. I love Ravi Zacharias. I have enough understanding of human nature that nothing in 21st century surprises or shocks me, even with Christian circles. Christians are still very much sinful and flawed creatures, and we need accountability in our lives lest we too go astray. While Ravi may have proven to be very much the human that he was, I love him still, even as I know that he was deeply loved and used by the Christ that he loved and served down through many years. I mean, on and on and on. These comments never quit. The last one, my biggest question would have to be, how can we trust these emails? And if there's any solid proof from Ravi's side about this happening the way it's being framed here. If I were an accuser, I would create an email account in Ravi's name and make it all myself. This is where we need more investigation and confirmation of sources, which is difficult because this isn't a police matter and Ravi is dead now. I want the truth, but it's hard to know what to believe when it comes to allegations like this. I think innocent until proven guilty is a good rule of thumb. And situations like these, like this, are tough for those of us on the outside reading the internet articles. How much trust can we put in things posted on a website or blog? So, my point is this. It's that instant skepticism, instant doubt, instant defiance in accepting any facts in the form of truth or seeking the truth. It's just that instant, he was a good man. You're exploiting his death. How dare you? That's not the Christ-like thing to do. Even if he was guilty, even if he had these quote unquote sins, God still used him in a very powerful way. So, in a nutshell, back off.
I think the one writing brought this to light that that's what we tend to do. We talk about David, we talk about Saul, later Paul, we talk about, different of the prophets who had very sinful lives. And we use that, I think, to diminish the sin in our own lives, perhaps, saying, well, if God could use that person to his glory, then surely he can use Ravi, and we continue to call this a man of God. Did Ravi do good? Obviously, yes. Most of us do good at some point in our lives, but it's how much do we use this good to do wrong?
Yeah,
how
to
much
exploit other people.
To exploit and to really destroy others. And that's not being discussed at all, because after all, as you read the tone in these responses, is leave him alone. He's dead. He can't defend himself. How do we know if this is true? Even though allegations and information was available much before his death, as you've said.
Well, and the fact that he sued his victim.
And right.
It's not like he came out publicly.
Right.
And admitted it.
No.
He came out and very defiantly said, it was like a big screw you to his victim.
Right.
Said, I'm going to sue you for defamation.
Well, I was reading through all of this, and I see he placed the blame on, this young lady, saying it wasn't me who started this. You're the one. It was
all unwanted.
Yep. You're the one who sent me pictures. You're the one who started this, girl. So, don't try to lay this on me.
And but I like that, Julie Roys put receipts and everything in these articles where he was sending gifts and, had gifts FedEx to her place and like all the personal emails and phone calls and like repeated phone calls, and from a burner phone. So, he's using secret apps. Right. Everything he did was shrouded in secrecy. So the question is, if she brought this on herself, if this was all her, if this was a ploy to catch him and, trip him up and all that stuff, why was it at his suggestion that they use these secret apps where the messages delete after so long and, the burner phones that he wasn't using his personal cell phone. He was using a burner phone with a fake fictitious phone number. That was his suggestion, not hers. So the question is that fair game when you're trying to analyze whether somebody was being truthful or not. And I think it is. And I think that's the other thing too. We so often blur the lines because we all know what it's like to wrestle with sin. All of us who are human know what it's like to wrestle with temptation, with sin, to get entrapped by sin, to get roped in where, at some point you're like, holy cow, how did I get here?
Right.
All of us know what that's like.
Every person alive, has
Every
dealt
living,
with
breathing
that.
person
Right.
knows what that's
Right.
like. And so what we do is we equate that to everything, to all sins, and say, well, even if it is true, Ravi just kind of gradually got sucked into this, and he was just kind of a victim of temptation. The problem with that is the level of deception and intentionality and defiance whenever he's called out. He very consistently was given a big middle finger to anybody who questioned him, and he would sick his attorneys on them.
I think your word intentionality, when something is intentional, whoa, back up. You don't overlook that. When a sin like this is intentional, it's very well plotted out. Ravi knew
Like
what he
using
was
secret
doing.
apps.
Yes, absolutely.
Like that's
yes.
not accidental. That's not somebody
Yeah,
who
it's not.
fell into temptation.
No.
He knew what he was
No.
doing.
Right.
Why did he have a burner phone in the first place is what I would like to know.
That's exactly right. Do you have one?
No, I don't. Although
that was a.
It is funny. It's funny you say that though, because I do have I have a separate phone number, and my phone one night it was buzzing, and I was getting these texts, and my wife was like, "What is this?" She's like, "Why? What are those notifications?" And I was like, "Oh, somebody's texting me." She's like, "But your phone doesn't buzz when you get text messages." And I was like, "Well, it does with this phone number." She's like, "You have a second phone number?" So I guess I had never told her. I have a second phone number for my business, for my speaking, because I don't like handing my cell phone number out to people.
Right.
I don't want everybody to have my cell phone number. So I have an app. It's called Second Line, and it's a free phone number that you can get assigned. So on my business cards, I have a phone number that is not my cell phone number.
I do remember you giving that to me.
Yeah, I called you to test it out.
I called you and
tested you on it.
And you suggested I do the same for my work, and I didn't do it. So this is a reminder I need to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. That way you're not giving your personal cell phone number out. I get
some
people do,
all
but
hours
I
of
don't.
the day and night, and it would be nice just to get business calls as business calls. But that's not the same as hiding. That's,
right.
Yeah.
And having a burner phone.
Difference. Right. There's a big difference in that. And I just think the blatant dishonesty, the blatant lies, the arrogance that goes with it.
And aggression when people call you out.
Right.
And Ravi was consistently aggressive when people called him out, and was like, "Who do you think you are to question me?"
There was no sign of any remorse, sorrow, saying, in any way, shape, or form, "I'm really sorry for what happened." That never came out of it, not even in his thoughts, I don't believe. I really don't.
So I think, the point is, this is really difficult. It makes it challenging when we're going to hold people accountable. And, there's so many people who say, well, we want churches to be a safe place. Well, the question is, do you really want it to be safe? Because if you're one of these people who are in the fanboy club, and you're like that with your pastor, or you're like that with your elders or your deacons or your worship leaders or your youth leaders or whoever it is, if you're in a fan club and you think your leaders can do no wrong, that's not helpful. You don't want churches to be safe.
Right.
Because that by nature creates a very toxic environment, because anytime that an accusation arises, you're going to rush to the side of that leader, and you're going to be saying these kinds of things. What a wonderful, blessed man. How dare you? Now's not the time. Right. How could you come out with these accusations? Why now? And on and on and on. All these cliches that victims hear all the time when they try to speak up. So, I go back and I think to when Alex came and spoke to us about her abuse, my
Right.
sister. Can you imagine if this was our response to her? Now's not the time.
I can't.
Why would you bring this up now? What evidence do you have? Even if he did these things, look at all the good that he did.
Mhm.
Jesus used him. You know, can you imagine if we had treated Alex that way?
I don't know that she would be around, seriously. I really don't, Jimmy. That's how devastating it would have been to her. I know that. I cannot imagine what victims of abuse can go through when that's the response.
Yeah, I can't
really-
either.
I can't.
I can't begin to imagine
I cannot.
how traumatizing that is.
There needs to be validation of the truth. That when a person gets to the point, like this young lady did, of speaking out, she was tormented day and night, and she said so. Her marriage was being affected, her
Mhm.
life, everything.
Both her and her husband were
With-
suicidal.
Right. And she knew she had to have some kind of cleansing and healing. She
Mhm.
had to. And it was not her intent. She states that over and over, to make this a big public scandal. She needed to resolve the issue and somehow get healing for her life and for her husband. But wow, what it turned into.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you know, I think if he would have just come out and apologized and given a
Yeah.
heartfelt, a genuine apology and made no excuses, just said, I'm an idiot.
Yes.
And I don't, you know, if it wasn't his intent to harm her, he would have to not only say that, but prove that. But we know that was
Right.
his intent.
I'm giving
because,
a scowl.
Yeah, because he was so intentional about everything.
Absolutely. You know, absolutely. First of all, just the age difference, just 30 years age difference, he knew better. Let's put it that way. He knew better. She was in a fragile state. He knew that. He knew certain things. He was intelligent. He wasn't a dumb person. He knew that he was preying on her. He did. And I don't mean P-R-A-Y on her. P-R-E-Y. You know, but no, he knew what he was doing. I believe that with all my heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And I think we just have to be willing to hear people out and listen to the facts. And I wish some of my friends who had attacked me and said, now's not the time. You know, look at all the good he did. What skeletons do you have in your closet? I wish instead their response would have been, I'm sorry that I posted a gushing post about Ravi. I didn't know. I honestly didn't know that he had these accusations. Will you please send our prayers forward to Lorianne? That would have been such a better response than the smart aleck, you know, go mind your own business. Why would you bring this up now? How dare you? You know, all those kinds of responses towards me just made me lose so much respect for so many of these people. And I don't know that I'll ever get that respect back. Because it's just, it's such a callous, ignorant response.
People get sucked in. They truly do. They really, really do. And it's kind of like having blinders put on. You know how some parents are with their children? Their children get into trouble, and a lot of parents will
rush
say,
to their defense.
Not my child. My child she is the sweetest, or he is the nicest, kindest person. My child would not do that.
Yeah.
And yet, when the facts are laid out, a lot of times, most of the time, our child did do that. Why?
But the parents don't want to see it.
But the parents do not want to see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, So I think we'll leave you with this truth bomb. When there are allegations and when victims are crying out, be quick to listen and slow to speak. Be willing to look at the facts and say, you know, I'm kind of undecided or unsure, or I just don't know what to make of this right now. That's okay. That's an honest response. But come back and say, but I'm willing to listen and I'm willing to learn. Because as long as we keep rushing to the defense of people because we idolize them, we're only going to empower abusers, and we're only going to allow them to get stronger and be able to abuse more victims. Let's be wise in the way we use our discernment.
Amen.
Thank you for tuning into this episode. We'll catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. If you found it helpful, please follow on Spreaker and search for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. If you believe in what we do, consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron, and check out the cool rewards our patrons receive. Share with your friends and tell the world. Join us in speaking out on sex abuse so we can change the tides and prevent abuse.